July 23, 1945, 6:32 a.m., Shari, Hokkaido, Japan. The fog hangs low over the fields, thick and damp, clinging to the wooden telegraph poles and the steel rails that cut through miles of farmland. Cicadas scream from the trees. A farmer pauses mid-step beside his horse cart, squinting toward the coast. The sea is only a few miles away, hidden beyond gentle hills and pine forest. It has always been a barrier, a shield. This morning, it will not be. On the single-track railway line outside Shari Station, a steam locomotive groans under the weight of its cargo. Coal smoke pours from the stack, drifting into the pale sky. The train is moving north, hauling military supplies, fuel drums, ammunition crates, rice destined for garrisons that expect an American invasion at any moment. The conductor wipes sweat from his brow. Japan's cities are burning under B-29 raids, but this is Hokkaido, remote, untouched, safe. Then the ground begins to tremble. At first, it sounds like distant thunder rolling in from the sea, but thunder doesn't move this fast. Far beyond the horizon, slicing silently through cold Pacific waters, the USS Barb, SS-220, sits just offshore, a Belau-class submarine, 311 feet of American steel, her hull scarred from battle charges and battle patrols. On her bridge stands Commander Eugene B. Fluckey, tall, composed, a Naval Academy graduate with sharp eyes that miss nothing. Fluckey has already sunk ships in harbors, torpedoed convoys in shallow water, and slipped through minefields other captains refused to enter. But today, he intends to do something no American commander has ever attempted. He's not targeting a ship. He's targeting Japan itself. Periscope depth, he orders quietly. Inside the control room, red lights glow against sweating metal walls. Sailors move with practiced silence. The diesel engines are secured, electric motors hum. The periscope rises. Fluckey grips the handles and peers through. The coastline appears in his lens. Green hills, thin rail lines, wooden structures, no warships, no patrol boats, no coastal batteries firing, just farmland. Range? He asked. 4,000 yards to the rail line, sir. He lowers the scope slowly. For months, American bombers have burned Tokyo, Osaka, Kobe, but no U.S. ground unit has ever stepped onto the Japanese home islands. No American force has attacked from Japanese soil. Until now. The plan is almost absurd in its audacity. Fluckey has selected 8 volunteers, not Marines, not Army Rangers, submariners, torpedo men, radio men, young men who signed up to fight at sea. They stand now in the forward torpedo room, stripped to working clothes, checking equipment in silence. Radio man First Class Paul Saunders fingers the wires of a demolition charge, a 55-pound scuttling bomb modified with a pressure trigger. Torpedo man James Richard lays out the detonator mechanism. Each man carries a .45 pistol, no rifles, no backup. If they are discovered, there will be no rescue. Fluckey steps down into the compartment. The men straighten instinctively. This isn't about destruction, he tells them quietly. It's about sending a message. The message is simple. Nowhere is safe. The Barb surfaces briefly in the gray dawn. Rubber boats are inflated on deck. The ocean swells gently against the hull. One by one, the 8 men slide into the rafts, paddling toward shore. The coastline grows larger with every stroke. The air smells different now, wet grass, pine, soil, not diesel, not salt alone.
For the first time in the Pacific War, American boots scrape against Japanese sand. They move quickly, dragging the deflated rafts into brush. The forest is silent, except for insects and distant gulls. No alarms, no patrols. They advance inland, guided by compass and reconnaissance photos studied the night before. The rail line lies just beyond a tree line, and then they see it. Steel rails gleaming faintly in morning light, telegraph wires humming overhead. Saunders kneels beside the track, hands steady despite the pounding in his chest. He threads the wires beneath the rail, setting the modified scuttling charge between the ties. The detonator is ingenious, designed to explode only under the weight of a passing train. No explosion now, no gunfire, no warning. They will be miles away when it happens. One of the sailors freezes suddenly. In the distance, a whistle. Faint, but growing louder. Fluckey checks his watch. They are cutting it close. "Move," he whispers. The team melts back into the trees, hearts hammering. They retrace their steps toward the shore, boots silent over pine needles. The whistle sounds again, closer now. Back at the beach, they inflate the rafts with shaking hands. The submarine waits beyond sight, submerged but tracking their position. The men paddle furiously. Behind them, the locomotive rounds a bend. Smoke pours from its stack. Steel wheels hammer the rails, and under one section of track, hidden between wooden ties, rests 55 pounds of American explosive. The engineer never sees it.
The first axle rolls over the charge. Nothing. The second axle follows. Still nothing. The pressure trigger requires weight, real weight, the full mass of a loaded military freight train. The third set of wheels slams down. The world erupts. A thunderclap splits the quiet Hokkaido morning. Fire and soil blast upward in a violent column. The rail line snaps like a toy, steel twisting mid-air. The locomotive's front end lifts grotesquely, momentum carrying it forward even as the ground disappears beneath it. For a split second, the train seems suspended. Then gravity wins. The engine crashes down nose first into a crater, cars behind it jackknifing in a shriek of tearing metal. Wooden freight cars splinter, coal spills, ammunition crates scatter across the field. A shock wave rolls outward, flattening grass in every direction. Birds explode from the trees. In shoddy station, windows shatter inward. Civilians stumble into the street, stunned. No air raid sirens. The sky is empty. But smoke rises from the direction of the tracks. Back on the water, the 8 Americans paddle hard, muscles burning. They feel the blast before they hear it, a deep concussion through the air and the sea. Then comes the roar. They stop rowing. Even from this distance, they can see the plume of black smoke climbing into the sky. For a heartbeat, none of them speak. Then Torpedo Man Richard lets out a breath that turns into a half laugh. We got it. Commander Fluckey is already at periscope depth aboard USS Barb when the explosion blossoms on the horizon. Through the lens, he watches the train crumple. He doesn't smile. Instead, he studies the coastline carefully. No gun flashes, no patrol boats racing out, no organized response. Just chaos. He lowers the scope. "Bring her up," he orders calmly. The Barb surfaces just long enough to retrieve her men. The rubber rafts bump gently against the steel hull as sailors scramble aboard, soaked and grinning, adrenaline still surging. Fluckey counts them himself. All 8. The hatch slams shut. Ballast tanks flood. The submarine slips beneath the Pacific, leaving nothing but ripples behind.
On shore, Japanese military personnel race toward the wreckage. Soldiers leap from trucks, rifles slung over shoulders. Officers shout orders. They expect air attack, saboteurs from the sky. But there are no parachutes, no bomb craters from above. The rails are torn upward from below. An officer kneels beside the twisted steel, staring at the unnatural precision of the blast. This was deliberate, engineered, planned. The realization spread slowly, then all at once. Enemy forces have landed. Panic ripples through local command posts. Telephone lines buzz. Reports travel up the chain. An explosion, possibly sabotage, rail line destroyed, military cargo derailed. But there is a deeper, more terrifying question beneath it all. If Americans can land here, where else can they land? The psychological impact is immediate. For years, imperial propaganda has insisted the sacred home islands are inviolable, the emperor's realm protected by sea spirit. The Navy will intercept, the Army will defend, the Americans will never set foot on Japanese soil. Now the soil itself has exploded. Below the surface, USS Barb runs silent. Electric motors hum softly as she withdraws into deeper water. In the control room, sailors exchange quiet looks. They understand what just happened. They didn't just destroy a train. They broke a myth. Fluckey studies the navigation chart. Hokkaido fades behind them as the submarine alters course. There are still patrols to complete, still targets to hunt. But this moment will follow him. Later, official reports will list it plainly. Demolition of enemy rail line, 1 train destroyed. Clinical, measured. But those 8 men will remember the smell of pine trees, the feel of foreign soil under their boots, the knowledge that for a brief hour in July 1945, they carried the war directly into Japan's heartland. And somewhere in Tokyo, intelligence officers will read the field reports with growing unease. Because if a submarine can deliver a landing party undetected, what might come next?
Within hours of the explosion at Shari, she is already moving south along the Japanese coastline, a shadow beneath gray water. The crew returns to routine, battery checks, torpedo maintenance, lookout rotations. But nothing feels routine anymore. They have crossed a line. Commander Eugene B. Fluckey stands in the conning tower, chart spread beneath a dim red light. His patrol is not over. In fact, it is entering its most aggressive phase. The Barb is no ordinary submarine. Commissioned in 1942, she has evolved under Fluckey's command into something unpredictable, almost insurgent in nature. While other submarines stalk convoys and open ocean, Barb has slipped into harbors, fired rockets at shore installations, and launched torpedoes in waters so shallow other captains would never risk it. Fluckey believes in calculated audacity. And now, after striking a railway on Japanese soil, he intends to push even further. Surface at dusk, he orders. That evening, the Barb rises from the Pacific once more, but this time not to send men ashore. Instead, sailors roll out an unusual weapon mounted on the deck, 12 5-inch rocket launchers, jury-rigged and welded into place earlier in the war. Inspired by landing craft rocket systems, these tubes turn the submarine into something no enemy expects, a floating artillery battery. Night falls over the coastal town of Kayo. Civilians are settling in. A small shipyard rests near the waterline. Lumber stacks sit in neat rows. A radio station hums faintly. Then, from beyond the dark horizon, a submarine surfaces like a steel predator. Commence firing. The rockets ignite with a violent roar, streaking toward shore in fiery arcs. One slams into the shipyard, another punches into a warehouse. Flames erupt. Shocked townspeople dive for cover as explosions shatter windows and splinter docks. Japanese coastal observers scramble to identify the attacker. Aircraft? No. Destroyer? Impossible. No silhouette on the horizon. Then someone spots it, low in the water, barely visible. A submarine. By the time shore batteries begin firing blindly into the darkness, Barb has already submerged again. Underwater, the crew listens to distant explosions echo through the hull. Somewhere in the forward compartment, one of the demolition volunteers from Shari runs a hand along a torpedo casing. Just days ago, he was kneeling on Japanese soil wiring explosives beneath a railway. Now they are bombarding towns from the sea. The line between submarine warfare and commando raid has vanished, but the risks are escalating. Japanese naval patrols intensify along the coast. Aircraft sweep low over suspected submarine routes. Depth charges begin to fall with increasing frequency. On July 26th, Barb is detected by coastal radar near the Tsugaru Strait. Aircraft approaching, the lookout shouts. Fluckey doesn't hesitate. Dive! Dive! Klaxons blare, men scramble down hatches, ballast tanks flood. The submarine angles steeply downward just as a Japanese patrol plane releases its payload. Depth charges detonate above them, violent concussions that slam into the hull like hammer blows. Lights flicker, gauges tremble, a wrench clatters to the deck. Depth 100 feet. Another explosion, closer this time. In the engine room, sailors brace against piping as the hull groans under pressure. Fluckey remains steady, voice controlled. Hold her steady, no noise. The Barb descends deeper, slipping into colder, darker water. The explosions grow fainter. The patrol aircraft eventually departs, unable to confirm the kill. Silence returns, but tension lingers. Every aggressive action increases the odds of retaliation. Japan's defenses are tightening as the war nears its final, desperate phase. American forces are closing in from all directions. Okinawa has fallen. Strategic bombing has crippled industry. The Soviet Union is preparing to enter the war. Yet in late July 1945, no Allied ground force has invaded the Japanese home islands, except 8 submariners from the USS Barb. Days later, as Barb clears the patrol zone and heads east toward open Pacific waters, a message arrives via encrypted transmission. The demolition of the Shari train has been confirmed. Photographic reconnaissance shows the rail line severed, rolling stock destroyed. It will be recorded as the only American ground combat action conducted on the Japanese home islands during World War II. Fluckey reads the message quietly. He knows history will compress it into a single line, but he also understands what it represents. The illusion of invulnerability is gone, and sometimes in war, that matters more than tonnage sunk.
August 15th, 1945. Pacific Ocean, east of Japan. The USS Barb rides low in the water, diesel engines rumbling steadily as the crew gathers around the radio shack. Static crackles through the speaker. Then the voice comes, measured, formal, unmistakable. Emperor Hirohito. For many aboard, it is the first time they have ever heard the voice of Japan's ruler. The words are translated quickly. Acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, cessation of hostilities, surrender. No cheers erupt immediately, no shouting, just silence. For months, these men have hunted in darkness. They have endured depth charges, mechanical failures, suffocating heat, and the constant awareness that a single mistake could send 80 souls to the bottom. Now, just weeks after they set foot on Japanese soil, the war is ending. Commander Eugene Fluckey steps onto the bridge, wind cutting across his face. The sea looks the same as it did yesterday,
same gray horizon, same rolling swells. But everything has changed. Behind him, sailors talk in hushed voices about home, Kansas farms, Brooklyn streets, California beaches. One of the 8 men who planted the charge at Shari leans against the rail, staring west. Somewhere beyond that horizon lies Hokkaido, the quiet stretch of track that no longer exists, the crater where a freight train once ran. News of Japan's surrender spreads rapidly across the Pacific Fleet. Battleships prepare to enter Tokyo Bay. Aircraft carriers reposition. Submarines like Barb receive instructions to cease offensive operations and prepare for formal end-of-war procedures. But among naval intelligence officers reviewing patrol reports, one particular action continues to stand out. July 23, 1945, Hokkaido, rail line demolition. The only U.S. ground attack conducted on Japanese home soil. It is not the largest explosion of the war, not the deadliest, not even strategically decisive in terms of supply disruption. But psychologically, it pierced something fundamental. For years, imperial doctrine insisted the homeland was sacred ground, that enemy forces could bombard from afar, but never touch the earth itself. The Barb proved otherwise, and it did so with 8 sailors in rubber rafts. Weeks later, as occupation forces begin landing in Japan, they do so unopposed. No beach landings under fire, no mass civilian resistance. The catastrophic invasion, Operation Downfall that planners feared, will never occur. History will debate the reasons: atomic bombs, Soviet entry, economic collapse, strategic bombing. But layered quietly within those final weeks of July is another signal, small, precise, and undeniable. American forces could reach anywhere, even a rural rail line in Hokkaido at dawn. When USS Barb finally returns to Pearl Harbor, her hull bears the marks of hard service. Crew members step onto the pier thinner, older, eyes sharper than when they left. Commander Fluckey will later receive the Medal of Honor for his aggressive leadership during these patrols. Official citations will mention torpedo attacks, rocket bombardments, daring penetrations of enemy harbors, and in a single line they will reference the landing party that destroyed a train. But those 8 men will remember more than the line in the citation. They will remember the weight of wet sand under their boots, the hum of telegraph wires overhead, the distant whistle of a locomotive growing louder in the morning mist. They will remember kneeling beside enemy steel, knowing there was no backup coming if they were caught. And they will remember paddling back toward the dark silhouette of their submarine as the explosion ripped through the quiet countryside behind them. A submarine is designed to hide, to strike unseen, to vanish. On that July morning in 1945, the USS Barb did something different. She stepped ashore, and for the first and only time in the Pacific War, American ground forces brought the fight directly onto Japanese soil. The rails twisted, the smoke rose, and a myth sank beneath the surface.